Why was Sergeant Wade smiling? The metallic clatter echoed through the weapons distribution room like a death sentence nobody else could hear. Lance Corporal Emma Reyes stood at the end of the line, watching, waiting. Her light gray t-shirt hung loose on her petite frame. Light brown curly hair pulled into a messy bun, a few strands falling across freckled cheeks. Green eyes that saw everything, missed nothing. 6 soldiers ahead of her, each one receiving their M4 carbine, each weapon gleaming under harsh fluorescent lights. Each rifle inspected by Sergeant Hector Wade with methodical precision. His shaved head glistened with sweat despite the early hour. Broad shoulders filling out a faded blue army t-shirt, muscles that looked like weapons themselves. He moved down the line like a priest distributing communion, lifting each rifle, checking the action, handing it over with professional courtesy, until he reached her. That's when the smile appeared. Cold, calculated, the kind of smile that knows something you don't. Wade picked up the last M4 on the table, extended it toward her. "Here you go, medic, your weapon." Emma accepted the rifle, her fingers wrapped around composite plastic and metal. Immediately something felt wrong, the weight distribution, too light at the front end, like something essential was missing. She pulled the charging handle back, chambering around for inspection. Click. The sound was wrong, dry, hollow. The firing pin making no contact with the primer. She tried again. Click, click, click. The mechanism was completely dead. "Problem specialist," Wade's voice carried across the room, loud enough to draw every eye. Or did they skip weapons training at medical school? Laughter rippled through the space. Specialist Lisa Chen near the wall, arms crossed, letting out a short laugh. Corporal Jake Morrison shaking his head, his expression mixing contempt with amusement. Captain Marcus Brooks in the corner studying a topographical map, his jaw tight, but his eyes never leaving the paper despite clearly hearing every word. Emma met Wade's gaze. For one crystalline second, she saw something beyond equipment malfunction in those eyes. This wasn't chance. This was deliberate. But time had run out for objections. The patrol was scheduled to depart in 15 minutes. She gripped the broken rifle tighter, her voice emerging calm, level, almost eerily so. "I understand, Sergeant." The formation began to break up, soldiers moving toward the staging area. Wade's smile widened as he turned away, and Emma stood there, alone, holding a weapon that couldn't fire, knowing exactly what waited beyond the wire, knowing something else too, something Wade couldn't see, something nobody in this room understood. She'd survived worse than a broken rifle, much worse. Her fingers trembled slightly as she performed a final check of her medical kit. The only sign of nervousness in her otherwise composed demeanor. But that trembling wasn't fear. It was something darker, something coiled, something waiting. 3 weeks she'd been at Combat Outpost Charlie 7, 3 weeks of sideways glances, whispered conversations that stopped when she entered a room, casual cruelty disguised as military culture. They thought they knew her story. They thought they understood why a staff sergeant had accepted demotion to lance corporal, why someone trained for one kind of war had chosen to fight a different battle. They were wrong. 3 weeks ago, she'd reported Wade to Brooks. Private First Class Sarah Mitchell, barely 20 years old with frightened eyes and shaking hands, had finally found the courage to tell someone about Wade's behavior. The comments that started as compliments and evolved into threats. The times he'd cornered her in empty hallways. The photographs he'd taken without permission. Emma had documented everything. Submitted a formal report through proper channels, waited for the system to work. Captain Brooks had called her into his office 48 hours later. The conversation lasted less than 5 minutes. "We've handled it internally, specialist. Sergeant Wade has been counseled. The matter is closed." Brooks hadn't looked at her then either, his attention fixed on paperwork that suddenly needed signing. "I'd suggest you focus on your duties and avoid creating further disruptions. This unit operates on trust and cohesion." Emma had understood perfectly. The system wasn't broken. The system was working exactly as designed, protecting those it deemed valuable at the expense of those it didn't. So she'd returned to work, kept her head down, waited, and Wade, emboldened by institutional protection, had begun planning his revenge. The pre-dawn air outside carried the unique stillness that comes before violence. Heat was already building despite the hour reading 0530 on the chronometer. The temperature gauge showed 105 degrees Fahrenheit. By noon it would reach 118, turning the desert into an oven that could cook a man inside his body armor. Emma climbed into the second vehicle, an MRAP that smelled of diesel fuel and old sweat. Private Danny Torres sat in the driver's seat, 19 years old. Fresh enough that his uniform still held creases from the packaging. He fidgeted with his rifle sling, nervous energy radiating from him like heat. Staff Sergeant Maria Kowalski settled into the passenger seat, 35 years old with the weathered face of someone who'd seen actual combat. Her eyes tracked Emma's movements with an intensity that suggested recognition, hovering just below conscious awareness. The convoy rolled out, 2 vehicles, 8 soldiers, route through Sector 7 Alpha to investigate reports of a weapons cache. Intel suggested moderate threat, but the area had been hot lately. Emma sat in the rear compartment, the broken rifle across her lap, her medical kit at her feet, and something else. Something nobody had noticed during the pre-mission check. A small toolkit, wire cutters, electrical tape, a spare firing pin from a different weapon system. Components that shouldn't fit together, but might, if you knew how, if you'd been trained by people who specialized in making the impossible work. The desert stretched out in every direction. Endless sand and rock and heat shimmer, the kind of terrain where ambushes happened, where vehicles broke down, where people died and nobody found their bodies for weeks. Emma's hands moved methodically, stripping the M4 down to its core components, examining each piece. The firing pin was missing entirely, not broken, missing, removed with purpose, removed by someone who wanted this weapon to fail. She pulled the spare pin from her toolkit. It was from a Beretta M9. Different weapon system, different caliber, different everything. But the spring mechanism, that might work, if modified, if adapted, if you were desperate enough and skilled enough and refused to die quietly. Torres glanced back through the rearview mirror. "You okay back there, Corporal?" His voice carried genuine concern. The kid hadn't learned to be cruel yet, hadn't figured out that caring marked you as weak in places like this. "I'm fine, Private, eyes on the road." Kowalski turned in her seat, her gaze fixed on Emma's hands, on the rifle components spread across the floor, on the improvisation happening in real time. Something flickered in her expression. Recognition, memory. Something she couldn't quite place. "That's not standard procedure, Rays." Emma didn't look up, didn't stop working. "Neither is issuing a broken weapon before a patrol staff sergeant." Silence filled the vehicle, heavy, loaded. Then Kowalski nodded slowly. "Fair point." The convoy continued deeper into hostile territory. And in the back of the second MRAP, Emma Rays worked with fingers that had done this before, in worse conditions, under heavier fire, with stakes higher than anyone here could imagine. She'd been someone else once. Someone the Marine Corps officially claimed didn't exist. Someone trained for missions that never appeared in after-action reports. Someone betrayed. Someone left for dead. Someone who survived anyway. Wade thought he was punishing a weak woman. He had no idea what he'd actually done. He'd reminded her who she was. What was the sound that changed everything? The ambush came at 1300 hours, exactly when Emma knew it would. The desert had been too quiet, the terrain too perfect, the intelligence too clean. She'd seen this pattern before, 2 years ago, in a place called Ramadi, with a team that no longer existed. The first explosion threw the lead vehicle 15 feet sideways, an IED buried under the road, professionally placed, perfectly timed. The blast wave hit the second MRAP like a physical punch. Torres screamed. His hands locked on the wheel, fighting for control as the vehicle slid toward the embankment. Kowalski was already on the radio. "Contact. IED strike on Vehicle 1. We are taking fire from multiple positions." Staccato crack of AK-47s filled the air, rounds pinging off armor plating, spiderwebbing the bullet-resistant glass. Emma's hands moved on instinct, checking the modified firing pin, testing the action. Click, smooth, mechanical, perfect. The rifle was functional, Wade's sabotage undone through pure adaptation, through skills learned in training programs that didn't officially exist, through experience bought with blood and grief and survival. Tors, get us to cover behind that rock formation. Kowalski pointed to an outcropping 50 meters ahead. Raise, you stay in this vehicle. Medical stays protected. The MRAP lurched forward, Tor's knuckles white on the wheel, fear making him brave in ways he didn't understand yet. Emma watched through the small rear window. The lead vehicle was immobilized, smoke pouring from the engine compartment. Sergeant Wade stumbling out, Specialist Chen dragging Corporal Morrison. Both men hit, both bleeding, both needing medical attention they weren't going to get. Not yet. Not with 6 insurgents firing from elevated positions. Not with the convoy pinned down. Not with everything going exactly the way someone had planned. Tors got them behind the rocks, partial cover, better than nothing. Kowalski kicked the door open. Ray's medical kit move. Emma grabbed her kit, grabbed the rifle Wade had given her, the weapon that was supposed to fail, the weapon that now worked because she'd refused to accept defeat. She dropped out of the vehicle into hell. The temperature hit her like a hammer, 118 degrees, maybe more. Heat so intense it bent light, made distance impossible to judge. Made every breath feel like swallowing fire. Rounds impacted around them, kicking up geysers of sand and stone. The insurgents had them zeroed, had them trapped, had them exactly where they wanted them. Wade was screaming, his leg torn open by shrapnel. Chen was trying to apply a tourniquet, but her hands were shaking. Morrison was unconscious, a head wound bleeding profusely. The other 4 soldiers from the lead vehicle had taken cover behind their disabled MRAP, returning fire, but the enemy position was too good, too high, too protected. This wasn't a random ambush. This was professional, coordinated. Someone had chosen this spot carefully. Someone knew the convoy route. Someone wanted maximum casualties. Emma reached Wade, dropped to her knees beside him. His eyes went wide when he saw her, saw the rifle in her hands, the rifle he'd sabotaged. That doesn't. Save your breath, Sergeant. Emma's voice was cold, clinical. She pulled his tourniquet tighter, applied pressure to the wound, her hands working with practiced efficiency while her mind calculated angles and distances and solutions. Chen stared at her. How did you fix it? Wade said. Emma met her gaze, saw the realization dawning there, saw the understanding that Chen had been used, that her infatuation with Wade had made her complicit in attempted murder. That love and stupidity sometimes looked identical. He said a lot of things, most of them were lies. Kowalski appeared beside them, her rifle up, scanning sectors. We've got 2 wounded critical, 4 fighting fit, and 6 tangos in elevated positions with perfect fields of fire. Air support is 30 minutes out. Medevac is 45. We don't have that kind of time. Emma looked up at the rock formation where the insurgents were positioned, calculating, her mind running numbers that hadn't been used in 2 years. Distance, 320 meters. Elevation, 45 meters. Wind, minimal. Heat distortion, significant. Target acquisition, difficult. Success probability, low, unless you knew what you were doing, unless you'd done this before, unless your unofficial Marine Corps record showed 47 confirmed kills in one afternoon, in conditions worse than this, with stakes higher than this. Emma stood, grabbed extra magazines from Morrison's vest. He wouldn't need them, not today, maybe never. The head wound looked bad. She moved toward a position away from the group, a slight rise that offered minimal cover but better sight lines. Kowalski grabbed her arm. Where are you going? Medical stays with casualties. Emma looked at her, really looked at her, let Kowalski see something in her eyes that made the older woman step back. I'm going to fix this. You're a medic, this isn't your job. I'm a lot of things, Staff Sergeant. Medic is just the most recent. Emma moved to the rise, dropped prone, extended the rifle, looked through the sight Wade had deliberately left uncalibrated. Another layer of sabotage, another attempt to ensure failure. She made mental corrections, adjusted for heat distortion, for distance, for elevation, for the fact that she was about to do something that would raise questions she couldn't answer. Her finger rested on the trigger. The trigger connected to a firing pin that shouldn't work. That couldn't work. That was working anyway because adaptation beats sabotage, because skill beats malice, because some people refuse to die just because someone else wants them dead. She exhaled slowly, found the space between heartbeats, the place where everything stops, where time stretches, where impossible shots become possible, and fired. The insurgent dropped. The second one turned toward where the first had fallen, trying to understand what happened. Emma's second shot put him down before comprehension arrived. The remaining four scattered, seeking cover, confusion replacing confidence. One stood to relocate. Emma tracked him, led him by 3 feet to account for movement, squeezed the trigger, he fell. 3 down, 3 remaining. And suddenly the tactical situation had shifted. Suddenly the trapped prey had teeth. Suddenly this wasn't an execution, it was a fight. Behind her she heard Kowalski's voice. Quiet, awed, Jesus Christ, who is she? Why was nobody firing back at her? The fourth insurgent appeared at the rock's edge, trying to get an angle on Emma's position, trying to eliminate the threat that had materialized from nowhere. He was good, professional, using cover effectively, minimizing exposure. But Emma had been trained by people who wrote the manuals on counterinsurgency tactics, people who'd spent decades perfecting the art of making bad people disappear. She waited, patient, watching through her scope. He'd have to move eventually, have to shift position, have to give her the fraction of a second she needed. There, shoulder, then head, she fired. The shoulder shot spun him, the head shot ended him, 4 down. The remaining 2 had gone to ground, smart. They'd recognized the change in circumstances, understood they were no longer hunters, they were being hunted by someone who was very, very good at it. Emma's radio crackled, Kowalski's voice. Raise, what's your situation? 2 remaining targets, both in cover, need them to move. Copy, stand by. 30 seconds later, the soldiers from the first vehicle opened up with suppressive fire, not aimed shots, just volume. Rounds impacting around the insurgent position, creating noise, creating chaos, creating the pressure that makes people move. The fifth insurgent broke cover, running for better position. Emma's bullet caught him mid-stride. He went down in a tumbling sprawl of limbs and dust. 1 left. The last one was smart. He stayed hidden, didn't expose himself, didn't give her the shot. Emma could wait. She'd waited longer in worse conditions, but Morrison was dying. The head wound needed a surgeon, needed it now. Torres was crying, his youth stripped away by violence, by the reality that combat doesn't care about your age or readiness, by the understanding that people die in ways Hollywood doesn't show. Minutes mattered. She needed to end this. Emma shifted position, moved 40 feet to the right, slow, methodical, using terrain for concealment. The last insurgent would be watching her original position, expecting her to stay static. That's what most people did, found cover and held it. But Emma wasn't most people. She settled into the new position, different angle, better sight line, and there, boot print visible behind a rock. The insurgent was pressed tight to cover, invisible from her original position, partially visible from here. Emma aimed carefully. The boot was maybe 4 inches of target, small, difficult, but connected to a person who needed to die so others could live. She fired. The round punched through leather and bone. The insurgent screamed, jerked away from cover, exposing his torso for 1 heartbeat. Emma's second shot ended the scream, ended him, ended the ambush. Silence crashed over the desert, heavy, absolute, the kind of quiet that comes after violence. When your ears are ringing, when your heart is pounding, when you're alive and someone else isn't. Emma stood. The rifle in her hands felt different now. Not like equipment, like an extension of herself, like something she'd been missing, like coming home after a long time away. She walked back toward the casualties, toward Wade with his shredded leg, toward Morrison bleeding out from his head wound, toward Chen with her shaking hands and dawning horror, toward Torres crying quietly, toward Kowalski staring at her like she'd just watched someone walk through a wall. Emma dropped beside Morrison, checked his pulse. Weak, thready, pupils unequal, the head trauma was severe. He needed pressure, needed stabilization, needed to be at a field hospital 5 minutes ago. She worked quickly, efficiently. Hands that had just killed 6 people now working to save 1. The duality didn't bother her, it never had. This was the job: destroy what needs destroying, save what can be saved. Don't think too hard about the philosophy. Tors. Her voice cut through his sobbing. I need you functional. Get on that radio. Tell them we need immediate dust-off, critical head trauma, multiple casualties. Mark our position with smoke. Tors stared at her, his eyes red, his face streaked with tears and dirt. I can't. Yes, you can, because Morrison dies if you don't. So you're going to pull yourself together and do your job right now. Something in her voice reached him, cut through the shock and fear. He nodded, stumbled toward the MRAP, got on the radio with shaking hands, started calling for evacuation. Emma turned to Wade. His face was gray, shock setting in, his eyes fixed on the rifle in her hands. Your force recon. His voice was barely a whisper. You're one of them, the ones who... Save it. Emma checked his tourniquet. It would hold. He'd live. Unfortunately for him, she stood, looked at Kowalski. The older woman's expression had shifted. Recognition fully surfaced now, memory clicking into place. Ramadi, 2 years ago, the Force Recon team that got ambushed. 7 dead. 1 survivor who disappeared from records. You're the Phantom. Emma said nothing. Didn't confirm, didn't deny. Just held Kowalski's gaze until the other woman nodded slowly, understanding that some things didn't need to be spoken aloud, understanding that the woman standing before her was not who the paperwork said she was, had never been who the paperwork said she was. Chen crawled closer, her face pale. He told me you were weak. He said you needed to be taught a lesson, he said. He used you. Emma's voice was flat, factual. Made you think you were helping, made you complicit in attempted murder. That's on you. Own it. The medevac arrived 20 minutes later. Black Hawk helicopter kicking up dust devils as it settled onto the desert floor. Medics rushed out, grabbed Morrison, grabbed Wade, loaded them with practice speed. The pilot leaned out. Anyone else need transport? Emma shook her head. We're stable. Get these 2 to surgery. The Black Hawk lifted off, disappeared into the crystalline blue sky. And combat outpost Charlie 7 suddenly seemed very far away. Emma sat on the running board of the MRAP, the rifle across her knees, the improvised firing pin still functioning, still working. Proof that adaptation beats sabotage, that skill beats malice, that refusing to die sometimes means showing people who you really are. Kowalski sat beside her, pulled out a canteen, offered it. Emma drank. The water was hot, tasted like plastic and iodine, was the most beautiful thing she'd ever tasted. You're going to have questions to answer. Kowalski's voice was quiet, not threatening, just stating fact. Lots of questions about how a medic made 6 kills at that range with a sabotaged weapon. Emma handed the canteen back. I'll deal with it. The Corps doesn't like ghosts, doesn't like people who aren't supposed to exist. They'll want to know why you're here, why you accepted demotion, why you got involved in Wade's mess with Mitchell. Let them ask. Tors approached. His crying had stopped. His hands had stopped shaking. Combat does that sometimes, burns the weakness out, leaves something harder behind. Corporal Reyes, I just wanted to say thank you for saving us. For Emma stood, put a hand on his shoulder. You did good today, Tors. You kept it together when it mattered. That's what counts. I thought I was going to die. We all did, but we didn't. Remember that, when it gets hard. When you wake up at 3 a.m. thinking about today, remember that you're alive because you did your job. The convoy limped back to Charlie 7 as the sun started its descent toward the horizon. 1 vehicle damaged but mobile, 8 soldiers alive when they should have been dead, 6 insurgents dead when they should have been the ones walking away. The math of combat never balanced, never made sense. You just survived it and hoped the nightmares were manageable. Emma sat in the back of the MRAP, watching the desert scroll past, thinking about Wade's smile, about the broken rifle, about the choice to sabotage her weapon before sending her into danger, about how close that choice had come to working, how close she'd come to dying, how many others might have died because she couldn't return fire, and thinking about something else, something darker. The ambush had been too professional, too perfect, too much like Ramadi. What if Wade wasn't acting alone? What if someone wanted her dead? What if giving her a broken rifle wasn't revenge? What if it was a mission? Who was watching from the shadows? Combat Outpost Charlie 7 erupted in chaos when the convoy returned. Word had spread about the ambush, about the casualties, about the impossible shots that had saved everyone. Soldiers lined the motor pool entrance, watching as the damaged vehicles rolled in, watching as Emma Reyes climbed out of the MRAP, still holding the rifle Wade had sabotaged, still alive when she shouldn't be. Captain Brooks appeared, his face tight, his eyes carefully avoiding hers. "Reyes, my office. Now." Emma handed her weapon to the armorer, logged her remaining ammunition, followed Brooks across the compound, every step measured, every movement observed by dozens of eyes. The whispered conversations had stopped. The casual cruelty had evaporated. Fear had replaced contempt. Nobody looked at her the same way anymore. Brooks's office was small, cramped. Maps covered every wall, reports stacked on every surface. The organized chaos of a man trying to control an uncontrollable situation. He closed the door, moved behind his desk, didn't sit. "What happened out there?" Emma stood at attention, her face neutral. "We were ambushed, sir. 6 insurgents in elevated positions. I engaged the targets. Patrol sustained 2 casualties requiring medical evacuation. All other personnel returned safely. You engaged 6 targets at extended range with a weapon that had been reported as malfunctioning. I repaired the weapon, sir. The firing pin had been removed. I improvised a replacement using components from my personal toolkit." Brooks's jaw tightened. "And where exactly did a medic learn to make those kinds of shots?" The question hung in the air, heavy, loaded, both of them knowing the answer, both of them knowing what came next. Emma met his gaze, steady, unflinching. "Advanced marksmanship training, sir, standard for all force recon operators." The silence stretched. Brooks sat slowly, his hands pressed flat against the desk. "There is no Lance Corporal Emma Reyes in force recon records. I checked, extensively, after you reported Wade, after I realized you weren't who you appeared to be. The only Emma Reyes I could find was a staff sergeant who disappeared from records 2 years ago, after the Ramadi massacre." Emma said nothing. Let him work through it. Let him connect the dots. 7 force recon operators ambushed. 6 died. 1 survived and vanished from the system. Presumed 2 damaged, 2 traumatized. Reassigned to non-combat roles under a different clearance level. Brooks stood again, paced to the window, looked out at the compound. But she wasn't damaged, was she? She accepted demotion, changed her records, requested transfer to Charlie 7, to my unit. Why? Private Mitchell needed help, sir. Bullshit. Brooks turned, his voice hard. You didn't come here for Mitchell, you came here for something else. You came here and Wade tried to kill you. That's not coincidence, that's design. Emma remained silent, not confirming, not denying, just standing there. Letting Brooks piece together a puzzle he couldn't possibly complete because he didn't have all the pieces. He moved closer, lowered his voice. "Who are you really? What are you really doing here?" Before Emma could answer, the door opened. A woman entered, mid-40s, civilian clothes but military bearing, hair pulled back severe, eyes that had seen things, done things, survived things. She carried a briefcase, looked at Brooks. "Captain, I need the room." Brooks's face flushed. "This is my office, you can't just—" The woman pulled identification from her pocket. Brooks looked at it, his expression changed, anger draining into resignation. He looked at Emma one last time, then walked out. The door closed behind him. The woman set her briefcase on the desk, opened it methodically, pulled out a file, set it down carefully. Gunnery Sergeant Emma Reyes, Force Recon, designated marksman, 47 confirmed kills, sole survivor of Operation Silent Thunder, officially discharged for psychological trauma. Unofficially, she looked up. Unofficially still on the books, still operational, still ours. Emma didn't move, didn't speak. Waited. The woman smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "I'm Director Catherine Mills, Defense Intelligence Agency. I've been watching you, Reyes, watching what happened today, watching you survive what should have killed you, again." She pulled a photograph from the file, slid it across the desk. Emma looked down, saw Wade, saw Chen, saw someone else, a man she didn't recognize, Arab features, expensive suit. This was taken 4 days ago, Damascus. That's Sergeant Wade meeting with Hassan Khalid, high-value target, arms dealer, information broker, bad man with worse connections. Mills pulled out another photo. This was taken 6 months ago. Baghdad. That's Hassan Khalid meeting with a Russian intelligence officer. Subject of that meeting: locations of U.S. force recon teams operating in country. Emma's blood went cold. Understanding crashed over her. The ambush at Ramadi, the perfect timing, the professional execution. The way her entire team had walked into a kill box designed specifically for them. It wasn't bad luck, it wasn't random, it was betrayal. Mills continued, her voice clinical, detached. We've been investigating Wade for 8 months, following his connections, his communications, his financial records. We believe he's been selling information. Operational details. Patrol routes, mission parameters, all to Hassan Khalid, all finding its way to people who want Americans dead. She pulled out more documents, bank statements, transaction logs, encrypted messages. Wade knew you were force recon, don't know how, don't know when he figured it out, but he knew. And he reached out to Khalid, told him you were alive, told him the Phantom had resurfaced. Emma found her voice. Why? Money, mostly, also ego. Wade doesn't like being challenged, doesn't like being reported, doesn't like women who refuse to stay in their assigned boxes. When you reported him about Mitchell when Brooks protected him, Wade decided you needed to die, reached out to his contacts, arranged the ambush, sabotaged your weapon, sent you into a kill box. Mills closed the file. But he underestimated you. They all did. Khalid's people are dead. Wade's in custody. And you're still breathing, which brings us to now. She leaned forward. The DIA wants you back, Rays, full reinstatement, full rank, back to force recon, back to the fight. Emma stood silent, processing, remembering 7 faces, 7 names, 7 people betrayed by someone wearing the same uniform. What about the others? Emma's voice was quiet. The teams before Ramadi, the ones who died in similar ambushes, similar circumstances. Mills's expression flickered. What others? Don't lie to me, I've done the research, pulled the after-action reports. 3 other force recon teams, same pattern, same MO, all with single survivors. All survivors quickly reassigned to non-combat roles. Someone's been hunting my people, using traitors like Wade, making it look like bad luck. Mills stood. Walked to the window, her silence confirming everything. We're investigating. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting right now. Mills turned. Someone is targeting elite operators, using assets inside our own ranks. We don't know who, don't know why, don't know how deep this goes, but we need people we can trust, people who can fight, people who survived once and can survive again. We need you. Emma thought about Wade's smile, about the broken rifle, about 6 insurgents dead in the desert, about 7 friends dead in Ramadi, about a conspiracy that ran deeper than anyone wanted to admit. I need time. You don't have time. Hassan Khalid knows you're alive, knows you're operational, knows you're dangerous. People like him don't forgive threats. They eliminate them. You're a target now, with or without our protection. Then I'll handle it like I handle everything else. Emma moved toward the door. Alone, Mills called after her. You're not alone, Rays. You have people who care, Tors, Kowalski, even Brooks in his own broken way. Mitchell is safe because of you. The patrol came home because of you. 6 insurgents are dead because of you. That's not nothing, that's everything. Emma paused, her hand on the doorknob. I'll think about it. She walked out, into the corridor, into the evening heat, into a compound that suddenly felt smaller, more dangerous, more like a cage than a base. She moved through the shadows, avoiding the crowds, avoiding the questions, avoiding the recognition that came with survival. Her quarters were small, Spartan, locker, bunk, desk, personal effects kept to minimum. She closed the door, locked it, sat on the bunk. And for the first time all day let herself feel it. The fear, the anger, the grief. 7 names tattooed on her shoulder. 7 promises she'd made to carry their memory. 7 deaths that might have been murders, betrayals, executions disguised as combat. The phone on her desk rang. Internal line, she answered. Raise, silence. Then a voice, distorted, electronic, male, female, impossible to tell. Gunnery Sergeant Emma Rays, the Phantom, 47 kills, sole survivor. We've been waiting for you to wake up. Emma's hand tightened on the phone. Who is this? Someone who knows the truth about Ramadi, about Wade, about Hassan Khalid, about who's really pulling the strings. The voice paused. 3 other force recon teams that year. Same pattern, same MO. All with single survivors. All survivors quickly reassigned to non-combat roles. You're not the first, you're just the first who came back. Who are you? Call me Blackwatch, a friend for now. Why tell me this? Because you deserve the truth. And because the people who did this are still out there, still operating, still dangerous. Watch your back, Phantom. Not everyone who salutes you wishes you well. The line went dead. Emma sat motionless, the phone still pressed to her ear, listening to empty static. Her other hand moved unconsciously to her shoulder, tracing the tattoo she couldn't see but knew by heart. 7 names, 7 deaths that might have been orchestrated. Someone in the shadows, someone with access, someone dangerous. She stood, moved to her locker. From the bottom, wrapped in cloth and hidden beneath uniforms, she withdrew a challenge coin. The one given only to those who'd completed the most classified training in the Marine Corps, the one that marked her as something more than force recon, something that officially didn't exist. She turned it over. On one side the eagle, globe, and anchor, on the other an inscription. Silent, swift, sure. The motto of a unit that had been disbanded 5 years ago, or so the official records claimed. Emma walked to the window, looked out at Charlie 7, at the base that had dismissed her, then discovered who she really was, at people who had learned too late that assumptions could be fatal. Someone knocked on her door, she opened it. Torres stood there, his face serious, older somehow. Combat does that. Corporal Reyes, I wanted to thank you for what you said today, for helping me through it. Emma nodded. You did good, Torres, better than you think. Will you teach me? Teach you what? How to be like you, how to stay calm, how to make those shots, how to survive. Emma looked at the kid, saw eagerness, saw potential, saw something worth saving. Being like me isn't something you want, Private. It comes with costs you can't imagine. I still want to learn. She studied him, saw determination, saw the raw material that could be shaped into something dangerous, something useful. All right, tomorrow, 0500, firing range. Bring discipline, bring focus. Leave your ego at the gate, Torres smiled, actually smiled. Yes, ma'am, he left. Emma closed the door, and for the first time since Ramadi felt something besides grief and anger, purpose, direction, reason. They thought giving her a broken rifle would end her. Instead, it reminded her who she was. A Marine, and Marines improvise, adapt, overcome, no matter the cost. What does vengeance look like when it wears silence? The investigation moved fast once Wade was in custody. Military intelligence descended on Charlie 7 like a storm. Interrogations, searches, records pulled, connections traced. The network Wade had built unraveled thread by thread. Specialist Chen was arrested 3 days later. Her phone contained messages to Wade, coordinates for the patrol route, timing for the ambush, evidence of sabotage against Emma's equipment, the backup radio in the water, the damaged gear, all of it documented. All of it premeditated. She broke during interrogation, confessed to everything, claimed she thought she was helping Wade, thought they were teaching Emma a lesson, didn't understand she was participating in attempted murder. The legal officer wasn't buying it. Neither was anyone else. Captain Brooks was suspended pending investigation. His protection of Wade, his dismissal of Emma's report about Mitchell, his failure to investigate properly, all of it documented, all of it career-ending. He tried to do the expedient thing, protect his unit's cohesion, avoid scandal, maintain order. Instead, he'd enabled a traitor and nearly got 8 soldiers killed. The math wasn't complicated. Emma testified at the Article 32 hearing, her voice calm, her facts precise. Her memory perfect. She described the weapons distribution. The broken rifle, the patrol, the ambush, the shots, 6 targets, 6 kills, all at extended range with an improvised weapon. The panel of officers listened in silence. When she finished, the presiding colonel leaned forward. Gunnery Sergeant Reyes, your file indicates you're a medic. Lance Corporal, no advanced tactical training. How do you explain your performance? Emma looked him in the eye. I can't, sir, not without accessing classified materials. The colonel nodded slowly, understanding dawning. This hearing is adjourned. Reyes, you're dismissed. The rest of this will be handled through appropriate channels. Emma stood, saluted, walked out. The corridor outside was empty except for one person. Kowalski leaned against the wall, arms crossed. You're not who you say you are, Emma stopped. No, you're someone the Corps wants to forget, someone dangerous. Someone who survived hell and came back different. Yes. Kowalski pushed off the wall, walked closer. I was in Fallujah, '04, house to house fighting, saw things, did things, survived things. I know what that kind of experience does to people, know what it costs. She pulled something from her pocket, a challenge coin, different design than Emma's, different unit, same level of classification. 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, Specialized Operations, 3 tour, saw action in places that don't exist on maps with people who don't exist in records. She held Emma's gaze. Takes one to know one, Phantom. Emma accepted the coin, turned it over. The weight felt right, familiar. Why tell me? Because you need to know you're not alone. Because the Corps might want to forget people like us, but we remember. We find each other, we watch each other's backs. Kowalski smiled, tired, real. Tors isn't the only one who wants to learn from you. Half the junior enlisted are asking questions, trying to figure out who you are, what you did, how you survived. Emma handed the coin back. I don't want to be a story. Too late, you already are the Phantom who came back, the medic who made 6 impossible shots, the woman who survived betrayal twice and kept fighting. That's legend material. Kowalski pocketed the coin. Use it, train them, teach them, give them something real to believe in, not the propaganda, not the recruiting commercials. Real courage, real strength, real survival. She walked away, left Emma standing in the corridor, thinking about legends, about stories, about 7 names on her shoulder that deserve their own legend, their own story, their own justice. The next morning, 15 soldiers showed up at the firing range at 0500. Tors, 3 others from the patrol, a dozen junior enlisted who'd heard the stories, who wanted to learn, who were tired of being told they weren't good enough. Emma looked at them, saw eagerness, saw potential, saw the raw material that could be shaped. This isn't going to be easy, she said. This isn't about tricks or shortcuts. This is about fundamentals, about discipline, about putting in the hours when nobody's watching. About being better today than you were yesterday. She picked up a rifle, checked the action. First lesson, know your weapon, not just how to use it, how it works, how it fails, how to fix it when someone tries to sabotage it, because someone always tries to sabotage it. She broke the rifle down, laid the components out, explained each piece, its function, its common failures, how to improvise replacement. The soldiers listened, took notes, asked questions. For 2 hours Emma taught, not marksmanship, not tactics, fundamentals, the boring parts, the parts that matter when everything goes wrong. Tors stayed after the others left. That wasn't what I expected. What did you expect? Shooting, cool stories, secret techniques. Emma reassembled the rifle, smooth. Practiced, secret techniques don't exist. Just fundamentals practiced until they become instinct. Just preparation meeting opportunity, just refusing to quit when quitting would be easier. Tors nodded. What happened to you? In Ramadi? Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then, 7 people died, I didn't. Every day since I've tried to figure out why. Tried to make it mean something. Tried to justify surviving when better people didn't. You figure it out. No, but I figured out something else. Survival isn't about being the best, it's about adapting, about refusing to accept defeat, about finding a way forward when the way forward doesn't exist. She handed him the rifle. Practice, not just shooting, everything, weapon maintenance, physical conditioning, mental preparation, tactical thinking, all of it matters, all of it keeps you alive. Tors took the rifle, his hands steady now, confident. Thank you, Corporal. For teaching me, for saving me, for showing me it's possible. Emma watched him walk away and thought about 7 ghosts, about whether they'd approve of this, of her training the next generation, of her moving forward while they stayed frozen in Ramadi. Forever 23, forever brave, forever dead. That night her phone rang again, the distorted voice. Blackwatch, you're training them, building something, that's good, you'll need allies for what's coming. Emma had expected this call. What's coming? Hassan Khalid is dead, drone strike, Damascus, 2 days ago, but before he died he sent a message. Names, locations, payment schedules, a list of American service members on foreign payrolls. Wade was just one piece. There are others. Emma's grip tightened on the phone. How many others? 17 confirmed. maybe more across different branches, different units, different ranks, all selling information, all responsible for American deaths. The voice paused. Your team wasn't the only one betrayed. They weren't the first. Won't be the last unless someone stops it. Who's behind it? That's the question. Someone with resources, someone with access, someone who benefits from dead American special operators. Could be foreign intelligence, could be private contractors, could be someone inside our own government. Blackwatch's tone hardened. But whoever it is, they know about you now. Know you're asking questions, know you survived twice. They won't make that mistake again. Let them come. They will, but not directly, not obviously. They'll use proxies, accidents, training incidents, suicides. People like you die quietly these days. No headlines, no investigations, just tragic losses. The voice softened slightly. Watch your back, Phantom. Trust nobody. Question everything. And remember, dignity doesn't need to announce itself. It simply acts. The line went dead. Emma sat in darkness, thinking about 17 traitors, about 7 dead friends, about justice deferred but not forgotten, about what came next. The door opened. Mills stood there, the DIA director, her expression grim. You heard. About Khalid, yes. Then you know what's coming. The people behind this network won't let you keep digging, won't let you keep breathing. Mills entered, closed the door. I'm here to make you an offer, full protection, new identity. Transfer out of here to somewhere they can't reach you. We'll handle the investigation. We'll find who's responsible. Emma stood, moved to the window. And my team, the people who died in Ramadi, they just become case numbers in a classified file. They become justice. Eventually, when we've built the case, when we've identified all players, when we can strike without missing anyone. Mills's voice carried conviction, belief. But that takes time, takes patience, takes you staying alive long enough to testify. Emma thought about Wade's smile, about the broken rifle, about 7 names tattooed on her shoulder, about promises made to the dead. I'm not running. Then you're choosing death. I'm choosing to fight, on my terms, my way. Mills was quiet then. All right, but you don't do it alone. DIA will provide support, intelligence, resources, cover. You keep training your soldiers, keep building something real, keep being visible. We'll work in the shadows, track the network, identify targets, and when we're ready, we burn it all down. Emma turned from the window, met Mills's gaze. Every traitor, every handler, every asset, all of them. All of them, Mills agreed. She pulled out a phone, encrypted, unmarked. Direct line to me. Use it when you need help, when things get dark, when you need extraction. Emma took the phone, pocketed it. I won't need extraction. I'm not leaving. Everyone needs extraction eventually. Ray's pride gets people killed. So does hiding. Mills left. Emma returned to the window, looked out at Charlie 7, at the compound that had tried to break her, that had failed, that had revealed something darker underneath the surface. Someone knocked. She opened the door. Torres again. Behind him, a dozen others, the soldiers from the morning training. We heard, Torres said, about the investigation, about Wade, about what really happened. Emma waited. We want you to know, Torres continued. We're with you, whatever comes next, whoever tries something. We're watching your back. The others nodded, grim, determined, young faces hardened by recent experience, by betrayal, by learning that the enemy wasn't always obvious, wasn't always foreign. Emma looked at them, saw loyalty bought with actions, with teaching, with treating them like people instead of obstacles. Appreciate it, Private, but this isn't your fight. With respect, ma'am, it is now. You saved us, trained us, showed us what right looks like. We don't forget that. Torres glanced at the others. None of us do. Emma felt something shift. Something that had been frozen since Ramadi, the ice around her heart cracking. Not melting, not yet, but cracking. All right, then we train harder, shoot straighter, think clearer, and when they come, we're ready. The soldiers dispersed, returning to barracks. Leaving Emma alone again, but not quite as alone as before. She touched her shoulder, the tattoo. 7 names, 7 promises, and now maybe 7 allies. 7 people she could trust. 7 reasons to keep fighting. The night was quiet. The stars overhead sharp and bright. Navigation stars. The kind you use when everything else fails and you need to find your way home. And Emma Reyes, the phantom, the ghost who refused to stay dead, stood at the window and planned her war. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. Sometimes strength doesn't announce itself, it simply persists. Sometimes justice doesn't arrive in courtrooms or headlines. It arrives in the actions of those who refuse to forget, who refuse to quit, who refuse to let betrayal go unanswered. Emma had been given a broken rifle, sabotaged, set up to fail, sent into battle defenseless. They thought it would end her. Instead, it reminded her who she was, what she was capable of, why she'd survived when others hadn't. Not because she was better, because she was different, because she'd learned that adaptation beats preparation, that improvisation beats planning, that refusing to die beats every tactical advantage. Wade was in prison. Chen was in prison. Brooks was finished. The immediate threats were contained, but the larger threat remained. 17 traitors, maybe more, people who'd sent Americans to die for profit, who'd betrayed the uniform, who traded lives for money. They thought they were safe, thought they were clever, thought the system protected them. They were wrong. Emma had survived the impossible twice, had rebuilt herself from broken pieces twice, had adapted, overcome, persisted twice. Third time wouldn't be different. Third time would be permanent. She walked to her desk, pulled out paper, pen, started writing names. Wade, Chen, Brooks, Khalid, the Russian intelligence officer, 17 unknown traitors, and at the top in capital letters BLACKWHCH, whoever they were, wherever they were, whatever their agenda, she'd find them, all of them, would dismantle the network piece by piece, would bring justice for 7 ghosts and however many others had died to feed this machine. The work would be slow, dangerous, possibly fatal. But it would be done, because that's what Marines do. They finish the mission, they accomplish the objective, they adapt, improvise, overcome, no matter the cost. Emma looked at the list, at the names of people who thought they'd gotten away with murder, at the future she was choosing, dangerous, uncertain, possibly short but meaningful, purposeful, real. She thought about Tors, about Kowalski, about the soldiers who'd shown up to train, who'd offered loyalty, who'd become in their own way her new team, not the same as Ramadi. Nothing could be the same as Ramadi, but something worth fighting for, something worth protecting. She folded the paper, put it in her pocket. Tomorrow she'd start investigating, start digging, start hunting. Tonight she'd rest, would close her eyes and try not to see 7 faces, try not to hear 7 voices, try not to feel 7 presences hovering just out of reach. It never worked. They were always there, always watching, always waiting. But maybe that was okay. Maybe ghosts weren't meant to be forgotten. Maybe they were meant to be remembered, to be honored, to be avenged. Emma lay on her bunk, the rifle leaning against the wall, the weapon that shouldn't work but did, the proof that sabotage could be overcome, that betrayal could be survived, that even when they give you broken tools and expect you to fail, you find a way, you adapt, you improvise, you overcome. Outside, Charlie 7 settled into evening routine, guards walking perimeters, soldiers playing cards, the mundane rhythm of military life. But underneath, something had changed. Someone had changed, the medic with the steady hands, the lance corporal with the quiet voice, the woman nobody had taken seriously. She wasn't a medic anymore, she was the Phantom, and the Phantom was hunting. 7 ghosts smiled in the darkness. Their sister was remembering. Their sacrifice hadn't been wasted. Their deaths would be answered. Ramirez would have approved of the improvised rifle. Johnson would have laughed at Wade's fatal miscalculation. Webb would have reminded her to clean her weapon. Martinez would have checked her 6. Kim would have offered tactical advice she didn't need. Okonkwo would have quoted something philosophical about justice. Patterson would have simply nodded, understanding without words that some debts could only be paid in full. They were gone, but their lessons remained. Their sacrifice had forged her into something unbreakable, something that couldn't be diminished by sabotage or mockery or institutional betrayal, something that emerged stronger from every attempt to destroy it. Wade thought he was punishing a weak woman. Brooks thought he was protecting his career. Morrison thought he knew better. Chen thought love justified treachery. They had all been wrong about the fundamental truth standing before them. Emma Reyes wasn't someone who could be broken. She was someone who broke the things that tried to break her, then rebuilt herself from the shattered pieces into something more dangerous than before. They thought giving her a broken rifle would end her. Instead, it reminded her who she was. A Marine, and Marines adapt. Marines improvise. Marines overcome. No matter what the cost, no matter who stands against them, no matter how broken the rifle. Sometimes the weapon doesn't matter. Sometimes the person holding it matters more. Sometimes survival isn't about having the best equipment or the perfect plan. Sometimes it's about refusing to quit, about finding solutions where none exist, about making the impossible possible through sheer determination and skill. Wade gave her a broken rifle. She fixed it. They sent her into an ambush. She survived it. They tried to break her. They failed. And now she was coming for them, all of them, every traitor. Every handler, every person who traded American lives for money. They thought she was buried, thought she was broken, thought she was finished. They were wrong, dead wrong, and they were about to find out exactly how dangerous a phantom could be. The night deepened, stars wheeled overhead, and in a small room in Combat Outpost Charlie 7, Emma Reyes closed her eyes and dreamed of justice. Silent, swift, sure, just like the motto said, just like she'd been trained, just like she'd always been. The broken rifle leaned against the wall, a reminder, a trophy, a promise. They tried to make her defenseless. Instead, they made her angry. And an angry phantom was the most dangerous thing in the world, more dangerous than any weapon. More dangerous than any enemy, more dangerous than any betrayal, because the phantom had already lost everything once, had already died once, had already survived the impossible once. What did she have left to fear? Nothing, absolutely nothing, and that made her unstoppable.